I've done a lot of research on this, and after going to a meeting of my beekeeping club, the only thing I can say for sure about winterizing bees is that there's a lot of different opinions on it. So this is what I did. In the fall, at the end of the nectar flow, you should remove any supers that aren't at least half full of honey. These two supers have no capped honey, just some nectar and open cells. I'll lay them on top for the bees to clean up. They'll get to enjoy the fruits of their labor. When they're empty of nectar and dry, I'll store them for the winter. I planned on waiting a couple of weeks after I pull those mostly empty supers to let the bees keep working the remaining supers. But after a few days I noticed the bees were moving the honey down from the supers into the lower deeps. So I grabbed those two supers and harvested them before the girls could clean me out. Funny how that behavior spans multiple cultures. It's been a pretty good harvest. I've got about a 3/4 full bucket of honey here. It weighs 40 pounds. So combined with the early season take of 47 pounds, that gives me 87 pounds of honey for my second season. I think this is primarily from goldenrod. There's a lot of that around, and I think it's the primary plant in bloom at this time of year. I'll bottle a little bit of this goldenrod honey so I can grade the color. Certainly not as thick as my early summer honey. My first 3 honey harvests. On the left is an amber from late last summer. In the middle is an extra white from the beginning of this summer. And on the right, an extra light amber from late summer, fall this year. This is a winter syrup recipe. It's a special syrup for feeding the bees going into the winter months. The thicker consistency recipe makes it easier for the bees to convert the syrup into capped honey that they'll need to store for the winter. This is 10 quarts of water. It's boiled. You don't want to pour the sugar into boiling water itself because it might caramelize and that can make the bees sick. So I'll just, now I'm going to stir this sugar up and let it dissolve. And when it gets to room temperature, I'll go ahead and add the Honey Bee Healthy and the Fumagillin B Nosema medication. So this should be right around 4 gallons of heavy syrup, 2 gallons for each of the hives. I'm going to take some preventative measures and medicate the bees for the winter. Nosema is probably the most serious disease that affects an overwintering brood, the most common symptom of which is dysentery. Basically, you'll see bee poop on the outside of the hives. Quiet, you. It affects their ability to digest pollen, thereby shortening the worker bees' lives. The most, or at least the recommended treatment for it is to dissolve Fumagillin B into their syrup and feed it to them. You dissolve Fumagillin B into cool water first, then add it to the cool down syrup. It won't dissolve properly if you add it directly to the syrup. For this bottle, the dosage is a ½ teaspoon per gallon of syrup, and since we have 4 gallons here, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons. Okay, so We'll add it to the simple syrup. Stir it up. I'm also going to add this feeding supplement called Honey Bee Healthy. It's a feeding stimulant, and it's made up of lemongrass and spearmint oil. And basically it just provides some of the essential minerals to promote a vigorous and healthy hive. And for this bottle, the dosage is 1 tablespoon per gallon, so I'll be adding 4 tablespoons of Honey Bee Healthy to the mix. And this I can add directly. Does say shake well. So 4 tablespoons. And I'm going to take this out to the bee yard and give it to the girls.
Medicated syrup's only used on the first 2 gallons. Again, that's 4 gallons, so only this first feeding. But again, I will continue using the Honey Bee Healthy after they finish off this first dose. Oh, this is heavy. So I'm going to divide this evenly between them. I can really smell that Honey Bee Healthy. It smells really, really good. That lemongrass and spearmint. Hopefully they'll heat up all that syrup and build up their stores to a good enough level so that they'll survive the winter. And don't forget to install a mouse guard. I put on the entrance reducers on the hive several weeks ago. It restricts the entrance to a small 2.5 inch by 1/4 inch slot, and that'll serve to keep the cold winds out and also help with keeping the mice out. Well, unfortunately there was a frost last week, and it killed this hive. The second hive's still doing great. You can see it's a nice warm day today. This is the end of October, and they're out on their cleansing flights, and but this one's completely dead. So, and it's unfortunate because this, there's a full box of honey here. This is easily 50 or 60 pounds. Got a bunch of big frames of honey here. I'm not sure what to do with, but I may inspect the other hive, and if there's a little light, maybe I'll transplant them. There they are, all the girls. At least it's not a mystery where the bees went, as in like a colony collapse disorder situation. So they're just all here. Well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this yet, but if this colony survives the winter, I may attempt to split and rear a new queen and use that to populate this hive, or I'll just buy a package of bees and do it manually. I'll let you know in the spring. During the winter, the bees will form a cluster to hold their warmth. By vibrating their bodies, they'll maintain the interior of that cluster at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Without proper ventilation, the heat off of that cluster will rise up, hit the inner cover, condensate, and fall back down
as icy cold water on the bees. That can either kill them or certainly stress the colony. In fact, for every 10 pounds of honey that the bees consume, they'll produce 1 gallon of water. So there's several methods to provide ventilation. The one I'm going to use is to drill a 3/4 inch auger hole just below the handheld on the brood chamber. That'll serve two purposes. One, it will allow that moisture-laden air to escape, and two, it will provide a second entrance for the bees in case the bottom entrance becomes blocked by dead bees or snow.
Oh, this pains me to deface my beautiful boxes, but last thing to do is to wrap the hive in roofing tar paper. You can buy this at Home Depot, Lowe's, any hardware store. The black paper will absorb the sun and help keep the hive warm. It'll also act as a windbreak. So I went ahead and measured things and cut out a cap that's going to go over the hive, and I also cut out and built from the paper a sleeve. It's going to be a little easier, so I'm just going to slide it over and put the cap on, and that should do it for the winter. Slide this sleeve on now. It's on there nice and tight. There's also a double thickness of tar paper for the cap. Okay, well, should do it. It's the tail end of November, and the bees have stopped taking the sugar water. Since it's a nice day today, nice and warm, I'll take this opportunity to remove the hive top feeder and put on the inner cover. I'm going to add the inner cover with the lip side down. That'll give the bees a little more room as they go over the tops of the frames when they're moving their honey stores around. With the lip side down, the inner and outer covers will practically be touching each other, and the air will have nowhere to go except fall back down in the form of condensation on the bees. So I'll be adding this 1/2 inch shim up front to lift up the inner cover and allow the air to circulate. There's a lot of different opinions on winterization techniques, but the one common thread amongst all the debates is that you have to provide adequate ventilation. Finally, I'm going to be adding some sugar cakes as a emergency feeding supplement for the bees over the winter. This sugar cake is simply granular sugar mixed with a little water and some Honey Bee Healthy and allowed to dry. And I'm just going to place some on top, and the bees can come out through the hole here in the inner cover and eat this if they need it. See you in the spring.